Ladies and gentlemen, domestically, the NDA might not have performed as outstandingly as it expected itself to, but in the last 10 years, if there's been one stronghold of the Narendra Modi government and one for which it has been lauded, it has been its foreign policy. Modi 3.0 has begun, and as leaders from across Southeast Asia graced the oath-taking ceremony of Mr. Narendra Modi, all eyes went particularly onto the Maldivian President Muizu. Today, amid the strained ties, Dr. S. Jaishankar and President Muizu held a bilateral meeting in Delhi as well. Remember, from neighborhood first policy to an outreach to the West Asian Islamic countries, the Modi government has largely been successful in boosting India's role on the global stage. From a usual skeptic to one who is willing to contribute more to global governance and strategy. Whether it's giving the world the phrase, "This is not an era of war," or evacuating Indian nationals from conflict zones, to organizing a successful G20 summit, or helping others through vaccine Maitri, India has emerged as a country that has been maneuvering its way through global challenges. India has also sought to counter China's influence in the region. The West, perceiving India as an alternative to the expansionist Chinese regime, has led India to make the most of its moment as a strengthening economy and a cement to its position in the Indo-Pacific. On the other hand, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's allegations, which have not been substantiated by evidence yet, are also a cause of concern. Now, as the Modi government traverses through two wars and changing geopolitics, how do we see India's foreign policy taking shape in Modi 3.0? To talk more on this, on the broadcast, I'm joined by Mr. Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, former secretary in the MEA. I'm also joined by Professor Madhav Nalapat, geopolitics expert. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you. Thank you very much for speaking with us at Mirror Now. Professor Madhav, let me start with you. You know, the past 10 years, Modi government has been lauded. It has been applauded for its foreign policy, for making India, be perceived as a global power, as a rising power in the global stage. But now things are different. First, it was, the Modi-led government with BJP having that majority. Now it's a coalition government. Do you think there will be major foreign policy changes that were made in the last 10 years, similar to those ones being made this time around as well?
Shreya, in my view, there is going to be a continuity in foreign policy. And Prime Minister Modi understands that South Asia is important, but actually it is the arc of Southern Asia, right from the Middle East to Southeast Asia. That is the natural hinterland of India, and he has given a lot of attention to that. At the same time, you will notice that for the first time ever, a Prime Minister of India has responded to a congratulatory tweet from the President of Taiwan. This is, of course, annoyed our northern neighbors, but this is the first time this has happened for a simple reason that Prime Minister Modi knows the importance of foreign policy as a way of getting development on a fast track. And so far as computer chips and technology are concerned, Taiwan, now that it is decoupling from China, is a natural partner of India. The other point is that during the G20, we saw that the African Union was included on par with the European Union, thanks to the efforts of India. And I think that focus on the global South, of India being one of the, basically being a very important engine for the global South. I wouldn't say leadership. After all, every country is independent. Every country is its own leader. But let me point out that China is not part of the global South. Neither geographically nor in economic terms is China part of the global South. But what is being seen now is because of the Ukraine conflict, an estrangement between the West and the global South, and China is trying to fill that vacuum when it is not part of the global South. As far as Ukraine is concerned, India has been very, very clear. The war needs to stop.
Professor Nalapat, it might not be. China might not be the part of global South, but it clearly sees itself as the leader of the Southeast Asian region. And that is something that India and other countries have been contesting as well in the past few years.
You're quite right, Shreya. You're absolutely right. They have been basically looking at not just India. Essentially, the rival of China, according to the Chinese CCP perception, is the United States. And they're frankly delighted that the attention of NATO has really focused entirely almost on the Atlantic, away from the Indo-Pacific. And the attention of the United States has gone back to Europe, as during the earlier Cold War with Russia, and not to basically with Asia, which is the rising continent. So India would like to see that these course corrections get made. And the good news is that we have not really had any kind of a major fallout with our Western partners, because they also understand the importance of the Indo-Pacific, although they are caught in the quagmire of Ukraine. And so far as Russia is concerned, Prime Minister Modi has made it very clear India will not give up Russia as a staunch friend. At the same time, India will protect the Indo-Pacific against the expansionism of the PRC. So I think the way of these balances in foreign policy, I don't see any issue why they should not continue, because the new partners of Prime Minister Modi, especially Chandrababu Naidu, they know the importance of a strong relationship with the West and India, with West-friendly countries such as Taiwan, Japan, and India, and also the relationship between Southeast Asia and West Asia. So I don't see any difficulty in this kind of a foreign policy continuing with the full support of the entire NDA coalition.
Okay, let me get in Ambassador Chakraborty on this. Ambassador Chakraborty, a couple of important points and a lot of concerns as well that we have been seeing, whether it's the China factor or the Canadian allegations that haven't been substantiated yet, or other factors that are coming in. Of course, we have the Maldivian president as well, standing firm on his anti-India stance. But let me start with the China factor. And, I want to understand from you how you see it, because so far, when you're seeing it from the Chinese point of view, you know that there is a strong government at the center in India, one that has complete majority, which was operating since the past 10 years. Now you have a lesser, in terms of number game, the government that is there, there's a coalition that has formed. How would China be really seeing this in terms of, how much now it can, if at all, bully India?
I'm afraid I don't think China will see the government, as you just described, as a coalition and therefore weak. I think China will see the prime minister, and then they will know that the prime minister's policy that has endured for such a long time and towards China is going to continue. And I don't think China will expect that this government, that it can push this government into making concessions on the border or elsewhere. Because where we are stuck is really the border and what we call the line of actual control, and which is where China unilaterally decided to change and abrogate and disregard all the previous agreements that we had arrived with them. Now, China did it, of course, to some people say to make India realize that China is a big power, and therefore India must, be deferential, and India must not join the Quad, and create which China sees as an Asian NATO, and which China sees as having been devised to contain China. And since India is being part of that, so China is not happy, and so the whole issue of Galwan and other things are basically meant to send India that message. But I don't think India is going to accept that kind of bullying by China. And I think China does realize that, because in Galwan, the way the Indian forces reacted should have sent that message to China. And of course, then China, what it has done is now trying to build up its military strength and air force, etc., near the LAC, and so has India. So I think it's a bit of a stalemate there. And India has said that unless we restore the status quo, and relations can't really go back to normal. But we are carrying on with our trade relations, and China is a major exporter to India, and and a major trading partner. There's no doubt about that. But I think at the political level, there has been a freeze, and I think, but this can be sorted out only if at the political level there is a decision that they must meet and talk about it and see how best it can be resolved. But as I said, India is not going to give an inch in terms of what is happening along the border, and China knows that. But China will keep trying. China will keep trying its various methods to sort of send messages to India or to contain India, as it has been trying in our neighborhood in different countries. But that's a challenge we have to face. And we are facing that challenge. The very fact that the Maldivian president
let me also talk about, Ambassador Chakrabarty, the Maldives. Yeah. Professor Nalapat, President Muizu is here in Delhi. He attended the oath-taking ceremony. He also held a bilateral meeting with Dr. S. Jaishankar today. And I want to understand, this whole strained ties, strained relationship that we have been seeing, Professor Nalapat. Is it only limited to social media? Is it only limited to the chatter online regarding the India-Maldives relationship? Because when you see leaders from both countries talking about each other and meeting each other, there seems to be a cordial relationship. There seems to be a focus on the growth and development of both the countries and their relationship.
President Muizu knows very well the importance of good relations with India, a very reliable partner. But I'd like to say, Shreya, it is not just social media. The reality is there's an effort by the Sino-Pakistan lobby to try and promote a very much more extreme forms of religious enthusiasm in the Maldives. And to some extent, this has succeeded. And as a consequence, some people in the Maldives have basically turned against India. And one of the important contributing factors to that is the false propaganda that in India, you have got the minorities being squeezed into a corner, which is actually not true. Minorities have done very well in India. They are a great asset to the country, whether they are Christian or Muslim or Sikh or Jain. They are a great asset to the country. But this false narrative, unfortunately, has been spread. And yes, social media has been an important factor behind this, but so has mainstream media. And I think it's very important to understand that I think that the one reason why it is being spread is possibly because of a question of doubt as to whether India will stand with countries like Japan, Korea, United States, and some countries in Europe in ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. Now, in the opposition, there have been some voices, we must have more talks with China. We've had plenty of talks with China. The problem is China wants us to accept the one China principle according to China, by which Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, and Sikkim are parts of China. How do we do that? How can we accept that? That this is not one China at all. So the point is, I don't see concessions being made to China at all. As far as those who are talking about talks with Pakistan are concerned, they've obviously not learned for the past 76 years of the futility of talks, and they have not learned from the grievous error we made in 1947 of agreeing to a premature ceasefire with Pakistan, where before the whole of Kashmir was liberated.
Right. Okay. Ambassador Chakrabarty, let me talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Later this month, we're expecting the peace summit to happen there in Ukraine. India so far has not confirmed its presence there. And so far, through these two wars that are happening, India has been able to walk the tightrope very smoothly, very strategically, acting upon its own interests. How do you see this really now moving forward in Modi 3.0 as regards to the peace summit and how this really moves forward now, the war and India trying to sort of balance it out in it?
Well, I think India is going to continue with this policy. Russia has been a time-tested friend, and while there have been ripples because of the Ukraine war and Russia's increasing dependency on China for economic and whatever other, merchandise, etc. But the fact remains that it is unlikely that Russia is going to lower or lower its profile in its relationship with India, because it serves Russia's interests to be a partner of India as it is looking after its own interests to get things from China because it is under Western sanctions. So that is one thing. And India has stood up to all the pressures that the West brought on India and did not give up on our long-standing relationship with China. And I expect that to be continued by the new government, or as we say, Modi 3.0. And I am confident that this relationship will be managed very well. Now, as for the peace summit that is supposed to take place, I really do not know what peace can be achieved there. I believe Russia is not even a party to that. And if you don't have one of the parties which is involved in the conflict, I really don't see how much peace negotiations can take place. I think India will be looking at it through that prism. And I won't be surprised if India sends a nominal low-level delegation, or even asks our ambassador there to just attend and report back on what happened. So I do not think that this peace summit is going to fructify into something concrete. If it does, well and good. But how will it do so without Russia being there? I mean, if the summit thinks that they can come out with a roadmap towards peace, and Russia is not there to be a participant in that, how do they expect Russia to agree? I mean, is it like a fait accompli imposed on Russia? I doubt if Russia is ever going to accept that kind of situation.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, one of the first events or summits that Prime Minister Modi now will be attending after his swearing in for a third term is going to be the G7 summit. He's going to be traveling to Italy. How do you see that really? India has so far balanced it out with the Western nations, with the European countries. As far as these two wars have been concerned, we've been balanced. We've seen our strategic and geopolitical interests and economic interests through all of this. Now, how do you see India really taking this forward with the West?
India has good ties with the West.
In Italy, sorry. You're
Ambassador
seeing
Chakrabarti,
in
I'll
Italy,
come to you. This was for Professor Nalapat.
Yeah, the change that has come about in Italian politics. You have Giorgia Meloni as the Prime Minister of Italy. And Meloni is definitely very different from her predecessors. And she's very India-friendly. And I think she understands very well the importance of India within the democratic constellation. And therefore, the Prime Minister is going to land on very friendly soil when he lands in Italy. At the same time, yes, you have the problem of Canada, but all the election polling results show that it is very likely that Justin Trudeau is going to do badly in the next election. And then you're going to have a new government. India has said very clearly, present evidence to us. We will examine the evidence and then come up with our assessment of it. And after that, we will tell you what could have happened. But you have not given any evidence to India, and you're making charges against India. I'm sorry to say, Shreya, that Canada under Justin Trudeau, the Trudeaus have, father and son, have been historically very close to China. And China's big intention is to separate the West from India. So social media is used to demonize the West in India and India in the West. And in this game, unfortunately, for whatever reason, Justin Trudeau has played to the gallery that seeks to demonize India in the West. The United States, a similar situation, it is handled far more tactfully than Canada. And I think one of the reasons is Joe Biden knows very well any suggestion that he's soft on China is going to ensure that Donald Trump becomes the next US president. Shreya.
All right. Ambassador Chakravarti, talking about Canada, this has been a cause of concern lately for India. Uh, but how much of a concern do you think India should have when it comes to the Khalistani element, the Khalistani link, considering the fact that in the just concluded Lok Sabha elections, we've got the likes of Amritpal Singh with Khalistani links who've won from their constituency from inside jail?
I think nobody should be in any doubt that the Khalistani network globally functions out of several countries. Canada is a strong, sort of host to many of these Khalistanis. So is the USA, so is UK, so is Australia. And and what do they have in common? They are part of the Five Eyes network. They are also what we call the Anglosphere, English-speaking countries. So there is a link between these Khalistani lobbies in these countries. And you can see that somehow they have been able to infiltrate into the Indian sort of system as well and keep alive this in Punjab through various methods, this whole business of, after all, Amritpal Singh has styled himself as the second Bindranwal. And so this kind of things have been happening.
Yeah.
And India has to be very, very careful and keep a close eye on this. Now, why do you think these guys have won? Because of certain issues in Punjab, for example, extreme, drug trafficking and drug abuse. These things are actually the bane of Punjab society today. And they have been unable to deal with it because of various reasons, which is there are domestic politics, etc. This is not the forum really to discuss that. But I would say that the Khalistanis will have to be dealt with, and Canada being one of the probably the largest host of these Khalistanis, and Justin Trudeau is playing domestic politics as well because he needs their vote, and when he goes into election, that vote might be crucial for him and his party. So I think he is playing that card, and I think you should, if we look at the congratulatory statement which came from Justin Trudeau and our reply, it shows very clearly where India's concerns are, because India very clearly said that it will be as per mutual interest and our security concerns. So I think instead of, whereas the Canadian
and
statement
interestingly,
talked about
Ambassador, it
human
hasn't
rights.
come immediately. Unlike with other global leaders, the Prime Minister's reply came in about 3 to 4 days after that tweet came in from Justin Trudeau. So clearly strategy and geopolitics also being played online if we go by it. But quickly before I wrap up, Professor Nalapat, if there are the top 3 things or areas that you would list for Modi 3.0 to actually work upon in their foreign policy, what would they be?
The first thing would be, the second and the third, ensure that the economic development of India goes to double digits. And secondly, that development be very tech-oriented. And then take advantage of the growing difference between China and the global West, as well as its allies, and the decoupling that's taking place, and ensure that India becomes a safe haven for investment. Ensure that regulations are tweaked and there are changes made so that India is seen as a very friendly investment destination. I think that we saw during the last 5 years, this is certainly happening, and many companies are looking at coming to India.
Sure.
The second point is, I think we should be very clear where we stand on the Indo-Pacific. We are not going to once again fall into the trap of trying to see if we can somehow get peace with China. China wants peace after it grabs big pieces of India. That's a reality. So from that point of view, the Prime Minister has made it very clear, both by his tweet on Taiwan, and I've just seen reports that certain areas in Tibet have been renamed with the original Tibetan terms. It was a huge security problem for India and all the democratic countries that Tibet was taken over by the PRC. And I think ensuring that Tibetan self-respect is kept alive and Tibetan name kept alive is a very important signal. India stands for a free and open Indo-Pacific against an expansionist.
All right. All right, we'll leave it there. Professor Nalapat and Ambassador Chakravarti, thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us this evening and sharing your perspectives. Thank you very much.